welcome first Deputy Foreign Minister of the Ukraine, Emine Dzhaparova. Welcome to India. And you come all the way from the Ukraine. You've been fighting for 411 days. It's a big moment.
Yeah, Namastey. It's a pleasure to be here in India, in a holy country, the country that I do love and the country that I've been visiting for many times, mostly the southern part of India. But it's a huge excitement to be on the motherland of all spiritual gurus and teachers and my beloved Sri Satya Sai Baba, whose ashram I've been attending many times. So being here with my official visit for the first time is a special moment for myself. And as you said, we are under the war. It's a huge tragedy. I think that every Indian people who follows this war, which is a very barbaric one, when our people have been tortured to death, these are civilians who did nothing, when we had cases when people have been shot because they've been standing in the queue for bread, when they rape children in front of their mothers and parents, when they kidnap our children to the filtration camps, when they hit us with missile attacks, when they try to freeze us in the most severe winter that we have in Ukraine, and we survived this, the most difficult winter in our history. But what I think is important is that Ukrainian people are resilient enough, and this is what we probably did not expect from ourselves. You know, becoming a nation that fights for its future. And I think that it's important to understand that we've been living in a, let's say, neighboring with a country that has a very neo-colonial attitude towards Ukraine, the country that questions the very existence of Ukraine and tries to solve this issue in a military way with terrorist attacks. But even though we have not won yet, but I think that Russia has already lost it, because it becomes the most toxic country, the most sanctioned country, the country whose leader is under the arrest warrant of ICC, naming him a war criminal. I think it's a huge step and something that the world never expected, because we are having a case with a P5 country and a country that is claims to be the second largest army in the world, and they cannot achieve their military goals in Ukraine. This is what I find the most amazing.
You have heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi tell Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, that the 21st century is not a time for war. You have met senior officials here. Have you invited him or any other leaders to the Ukraine, to Kiev? I
fully support the words of Prime Minister, His Excellency Prime Minister Modi, when he says the 21st century is not an epoch for war. He messaged it in Samarkand. We fully share this notion. We thought that the consciousness of the humanities, especially after the Second World War, is high enough not to communicate with each other by the means of force, by the language of force, by missiles and by killings, but unfortunately it's not. The lesson that we have learned in Ukraine, and especially in my homeland Crimea, when they invaded us in 2014, because the war did not start 24th of February. It started in 2014, in February 2014, when they invaded Crimea. And we all, as a humanity in my country, was not strong enough to give proper response to aggression of Putin. So the lesson is simple. Whenever evil is not stopped, it becomes bigger. So I think that we have to learn this lesson. And going back to your question, of course, the invitation to visit Ukraine for Prime Minister is there. There is a request for the phone conversation between our leaders, between President Zelensky and Narendra Modi, and I hope that he will personally invite Prime Minister to pay his visit to Kiev, as well as other senior officials, for example, National Security Advisor Mr. Daval, who has a very active interaction with his counterpartner Mr. Yermak, who is the head of the presidential office. So we have to state that there is a need for the intensification of a political dialogue, especially with regards to the G20 presidency, when we have India, a country that is playing and will be playing a greater role globally. it's not a case for India to escape this discussion. So I think that by having and taking this role of a global leader, India is expected to pay proper attention to the situation that is not regional, even though it might seem that this war is distant and is not about Indian people. It is, because the repercussion of the war can be felt in every part of the globe, with the food insecurity that is a result of this war, with the energy prices that is a result of this war, with the nuclear blackmail, when no one can be secured, when bigger attacks smaller, and other leaders might be also seduced, watching if impunity is there, if Putin is allowed to do his crimes. We have other leaders who might do the same. So I think it's crucial for Indian people to understand that it's about all of us. It's our common responsibility.
Also, there has been a lot of talk from other countries about India playing a larger role in the peace talks, trying to get peace in Ukraine, trying to get Ukraine and Russia to stop the fighting. Do you see India having a major role here?
I think that there is a dynamic, and I hope for better dynamic with this regard. Look, the motto of India's presidency in G20 that was vocal by Prime Minister Modi is one earth, one family, one future. Is very strong, and we do share this motto. We believe that everything is interconnected. So greater engagement of India into the resolution of the war, into the stopping the evil and aggression is important, not only for the region, but globally, also for the global south, also for all the regions, Asian countries, Gulf countries, African countries. It's really, really crucial to stop this evil, because as I said, whenever the evil is not stopped, it becomes bigger.
You've had meetings today. Have you spoken about the fact that India could evacuate 20,000 students and others out of the Ukraine in the middle of a war? Did you bring up these issues about more humanitarian aid from India? Did these issues come up?
Yes, absolutely. Humanitarian assistance is already discussed and have been discussed for quite a while. These are generators, these are the school buses, these are other options that might be performed. I will not open up the secrets. When it comes to these students, I mean, we are proud to have thousands of Indian students in Ukraine who are receiving mostly medical education. We are happy that India joined this mobility, academic mobility opportunities that are opened up for Indian students, and then they can pass their exam, which is a final exam, qualification exam in India. This is what our Ministry of Education have been strong in opening up these opportunities, because now we have 2,000 of Indian students physically in Ukraine, but the majority have been evacuated, and we did our best to kind of make it smoothly and in a safe manner. And I hope that after the resolution of the war, we will have more and more Indian students.
Did you bring up this issue of Russia exporting oil to India? And also, you are aware of that at least 60% of our weaponry, it's less now than it was, is still Russian.
Yes, of course, we discussed these issues. I mean, look, I'll be frank. I'm not in the position of instructing anyone, and my country is not in the position of lecturing India what you should do and what you should not. Of course, it's your sovereign decision how to build up your relations with other countries. But we think, and we do mean it, that relations with Russia are tricky, because if there is a dependency on Russian gas and oil, there will always be a blackmail language, because it's very traditional for Russia. If they have an instrument to influence you or to blackmail you, they will obviously use it for their own merit. The message that I delivered is pragmatic attitude and diversification. This is what Europe has been demonstrating, and this is, I think, the only right way to diverse energy supply and to diverse military supply. And on the top of this, I mean, look, we've seen these pictures of how Russian Soviet tanks have been destroyed in one shot of artillery or one drone shot. This is not an equipment that the future world will be relied on for Hitler.
How reliable is China, apart from the fact that they have come up with this? As an international force, how can you rely on China?
Ukraine and China have strategic partnership. Even though sometimes we feel that this strategic partnership must be and should be fulfilled to a bigger extent. We think, and we actually vocal the red lines in our bilateral relation. It's the supply of weapons to Russia, which is incompatible with what we see peace-loving countries.
See, and India has a problem.
Yeah,
Sorry to,
I mean, just
you have seen how India has been attacked by China 2 years ago. That's why the reliability of China is an issue.
We see some certain steps that have been taken by China, and I think this is exactly why India should be concerned about the war in Ukraine, because this war is a litmus paper of all the global actors that are there, let's say, and the positions that are there. If the totalitarian regime of Putin is not stopped and this evil is allowed, the others have been closely watching the developments in Ukraine. This is what India should also take into consideration in terms of the justice that should prevail.
You are getting, or at least there is a lot of talk about you getting Leopard tanks from Germany, Challenger tanks from Britain, the Abrams tanks from America. What is the position now, and where is your counter-offensive that is being planned?
It's been planned. We have some, let's say, weapons and positions that have already come to Ukraine and arrived in Ukraine. Some are on the way. I will not be able to give you any dates, but it will obviously happen in spring according to the plan that is now being developed. It will be a very crucial moment for Ukraine and for the whole world, because the outcome of this counteroffensive will define the future of the, let's say, resolution of the war. We are the most interested country of having the peace, because, as I said, our people have been killed, our cities have been attacked by missiles, so of course we've been striving for both, having our tactical military successes and diplomatic efforts. It's something that cannot and will, it's not inter-excluded, right? So it's something that might be performed both tracks. So I think that if the counteroffensive is successful, we might start discussions after that, and we will also greet the active role of other leaders, as well as Indian leader, Prime Minister Modi, in the negotiations and talks that are aimed at resolving the war.
Do you see the Ukraine becoming part of NATO or the European Union?
Yes, I think that it's again a path. As I said, a year ago, this discussion was very ambiguous, I would say. But now we made a long journey, but a very successful one, when we received a candidate status, something that no one could dream of a year ago. But we are now candidate country, and there is several criteria that European Commission confirmed, and there will be an assessment of these criteria, and hopefully it will be a successful assessment, and then we might enter the negotiation on entrance or access negotiation, how we call it, by the end of the year. So it's only a matter of time when technically Ukraine would join the European Union as a member state. But I think that the feeling, and by the way, more than 93% of Ukrainian people, they support the Ukrainian EU membership. So it's unprecedented number of unity of Ukrainian people. So it's only a matter of time. With NATO, we have to go beyond open door policy. I mean, of course, the door should be opened, but then the corridor should be seen, right? And the Vilnius summit that will take place soon should also come up with clear messages of what is the future for Ukraine. But then let me also stress one simple thing. I think that after the war resolution, NATO will be interested in Ukrainian alignment because first, expertise, the biggest experienced army, the military equipment that we have, so Ukraine can contribute and will contribute to the security that NATO is dealing with.
You see the situation, there's a lot of talk about the situation in the Crimea. One of your people has said that if we get very close to the Crimea, we can begin discussions. Secondly, you've seen a lot of reports about these leaks. Can you tell us quickly?
Well, the leaks, it's not the time, I mean, for my comment. Let us wait and see. Of course, it's always sensitive when the classified information becomes public, but let us not comment it for now. President and the leadership of Ukraine, as well as my minister, are very clear about saying that Crimea is an integral part of Ukraine. We cannot discuss peace in Ukraine or the war resolution without Crimea. Because if we discuss, it means that there is no fair and just peace, and it means that the war is not over. Even though, and look, we had it in 2014, we had positioning war, impunity brought us to the larger scenario, and if, let's say, this issue will not be resolved, believe me, sooner or later there will be yet another step of aggression.
Finally, there's so much aggression and fighting in your country. But India is not free of that either. You've seen a lot of terrorism. Did the issue come up during your discussions with Indian officials?
I mean, look, terrorist attacks or terrorism as such as a phenomenon is something that civilized countries not only oppose but try to stop it. It's difficult to stop, but I think that in my country, for example, like in my homeland, Crimea, I really want to share this experience. Mahatma Gandhi's heritage about non-violent resistance is something that has been taken by Crimean Tatars during their national movement during Soviets, when Crimean Tatars decided to fight for their own right without massacres, without stepping on the rights of others. Because in 1944, by Stalin's decision, Crimean Tatars have been deported from Crimea. And then, by the way, Russia brought Russian people to Crimea and changed the population of the peninsula. And then Crimean Tatars were not allowed to live in Crimea for decades, up till the very collapse of Soviet Union. And for these decades, the leaders of the Crimean Tatar community have been fighting for their right to come back to their homeland in a non-resilient way, the way that Mahatma Gandhi's heritage suggests us to do. So this something, and by the way, we never had terrorist attack in Ukraine before 2014. And when Russia invaded Crimea, immediately we started to live in the space where they have been imprisoning Crimean Tatars for being Muslim extremists. But we never had any single attack of Muslim extremism or terrorism in Crimea before 2014. It's yet another, falsification of the modern history. So to conclude, terrorism is an awful phenomenon. And I'm proud that I used to live and I live in the country that never practiced terrorism within its long history of 1,500 years by not attacking any other country. Same as India have been doing within your ancient history.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a wonderful interview.
Thank you
very
so
happy
much.
to speak
Thank
with
you.
you.